At the dinner, nobody understood the female billionaire CEO until the black waitress spoke Japanese. The air itself tasted expensive. This was the Palisade, San Francisco's most exclusive rooftop restaurant, a glass palace floating above the glittering city lights. Below, the bay was a sheet of black silk dotted with diamonds from passing boats. The smell of seared scallops, truffle oil, and aged bourbon swirled in the cool night breeze. But the real show wasn't the breathtaking 360-degree view. It was happening at a private table, under the soft glow of a crystal chandelier. On one side sat the hunters, Derek and Trent. Derek, the CEO, looked like he was born to sit in that leather chair. His suit was a sharp, tailored gray that probably cost more than a car. His blonde hair was slicked back perfectly, not a strand out of place. He had the relaxed smile of a man who had never heard the word no. Next to him, Trent, the CFO, was a different kind of predator. Younger, with a sharper suit and a flashier watch. He was the attack dog, lean and hungry, his eyes constantly calculating, his leg bouncing impatiently under the table. Together, they were a perfect team of arrogance and greed, smelling of victory they thought was already theirs. Their prey? An $800 million deal to swallow a revolutionary AI company whole. And across the polished walnut cable sat their supposed victim, Kamiko Hayashi. She was a living legend, a self-made billionaire who had built her tech empire from a Tokyo garage. Tonight, she was a vision of calm power. Her hair was a sleek sweep of silver. Her dress was a simple but stunning river of dark blue silk. She wore no jewelry. She needed none. But to Derek and Trent, she was a puzzle, and worse, a boring one. She hadn't spoken a single word of English all night. She only listened, her expression unreadable, while a male aide beside her softly translated. The men's patience was wearing thin. They started talking about her as if she wasn't even there. "You think she even understands a damn word we're saying?" Trent didn't bother to whisper, a nasty smirk plastered on his face. Derek swirled his bourbon and chuckled, looking at Kamiko like she was a painting on the wall. "Doubt it. But hey, $1 billion for a silent sushi doll? I'll take that deal any day." They high-fived each other mentally. They thought her silence was weakness. They thought she was intimidated, out of her depth. They were dead wrong. Her silence wasn't a cage, it was a weapon. She was listening, learning, and documenting every single word. It was a trap, and they were walking right into it with their loud, arrogant shoes. And slinking through the shadows, refilling a water glass with silent grace, was the one person they had all overlooked completely. The waitress, Naomi. They didn't see her, but she saw everything. While the titans of tech clinked glasses, Naomi Brooks moved like a ghost. Her steps were silent on the plush carpet, her lean frame weaving between tables with the graceful precision of a dancer. In her crisp white shirt and black apron, she was part of the scenery, a living, breathing piece of the restaurant's expensive furniture. To men like Derek and Trent, she wasn't a person, she was a function. A hand that brought wine, a face without a name. But behind her calm, almond-shaped eyes, a high-definition camera was recording everything. She was watching. She saw the way Derek's smile never reached his eyes when he looked at Kamiko, how it was a cold, calculated tool, not a genuine expression. She saw Trent's restless energy, the dismissive flick of his wrist when Kamiko's aide translated, as if swatting away a fly. She was listening, her ears, trained by a lifetime of listening to what people really mean, caught it all. The low, racist whisper from Trent, like negotiating with a bonsai tree, silent, decorative. The condescending chuckle from Derek, the sharp, ugly snap of Trent's fingers aimed in her direction. "Hey, sweetheart, more Saratoga. We're gonna need it." The word sweetheart hit her skin like a tiny slap, a patronizing pat on the head from a man who wouldn't see her as human if he tried. But behind her gaze kept drifting back to Kamiko Hayashi, and what she saw there didn't match the men's narrative. She didn't see weakness or confusion. She saw a profound, unshakable calm, a deep, still pool of patience. In the slight, almost imperceptible tightening of Kamiko's jaw, Naomi didn't see defeat. She saw restraint. She recognized that look instantly. It was the same armor she herself wore every single day, the armor of a woman the world loves to ignore, to underestimate, to look right through. And then there was her secret, a secret born not in a classroom, but in the sun-drenched streets of Kyoto where she'd spent her childhood. While these men were learning to be arrogant, she was learning the delicate, respectful cadence of the Japanese language. She understood every single word Kamiko's translator said. But more importantly, she understood every poisonous word the men muttered under their breath, thinking no one could understand. With every refilled glass, every cleared plate, the truth of the evening etched itself onto her soul. The condescension, the arrogance, the blatant disrespect. A quiet fury began to simmer deep within her, hot and potent, threatening to boil over. She was invisible, but she was witnessing a crime, and she was the only one who understood the full picture.
The thin veneer of civility finally shattered. Fueled by expensive bourbon and their own unchecked egos, the men shed their disguises completely. The negotiation was over. Now it was just a display of pure, ugly dominance. Trent's patience snapped. With a contemptuous flick of his wrist, he slammed his napkin onto the table like he was throwing down a gauntlet. He leaned forward, his voice dripping with condescension as he spoke to Kamiko Hayashi as if she were a slow, confused child. "We want to buy your company." He hammered out each word separately. "Do you understand the words coming out of my mouth?" Derek didn't even try to hide his amusement. He threw his head back and let out a loud, cruel laugh that echoed in the hushed room. "Maybe we should get some flashcards," he boomed, grinning at Trent as if he'd told the funniest joke in the world. "Pictures might help." But the worst was yet to come. As Naomi stood frozen by the service station, her back to them, Trent leaned conspiratorially toward Derek. He didn't lower his voice. He didn't care that she was mere feet away. To him, she was just part of the wall. "I swear, man," he muttered, the words slithering across the table. "This is like negotiating with a bonsai tree." He smirked, proud of his own cleverness. "Silent, decorative, and probably a hell of a lot older than it looks." The air left the room. The line had not just been crossed, it had been vaporized. From the shadows near the door, Naomi's manager, Foster, materialized. His face was pale with panic. He grabbed her elbow, his grip tight and punishing, his voice a venomous hiss in her ear. "Brooks, look at me. Do not move. Do not get involved. You speak only when spoken to. Is that clear? That is your only job." He was trying to shove her back into her box, to reinforce the invisible walls that kept people like her in their place. But then, cutting through the toxic atmosphere like a shard of pure, clear ice, came a sound. It was Kamiko Hayashi. She didn't look at the men. She didn't look at her translator. She simply gazed down at her hands folded neatly in her lap, and in a soft, almost heartbreaking whisper, she breathed a single sentence into the void. "Honto ni, watashi o mite iru hito wa koko ni imasu ka?" Is there truly no one here who sees me? The words hung in the air, filled with a profound loneliness and a quiet, dignified despair. They were not meant for the men. They were a quiet plea to the universe. And Naomi heard it. every syllable, every ounce of its meaning. In that moment, the fear of getting fired, the manager's grip on her arm, the years of staying silent, it all evaporated. The boiling anger inside her solidified into something unbreakable. Purpose. She knew she could no longer just be the ghost in the room. She had to answer the call. For a heartbeat, the world narrowed to the frantic thumping in her chest. The manager's hissed warning, "You speak only when spoken to," clawed at the edges of her mind. But it was drowned out by the echo of that heartbreaking whisper, "Is there truly no one here who sees me?" Naomi's feet moved before her fear could catch up. The soft click of her shoes on the polished floor was like a gunshot in the tense silence. Every head turned. Foster, her manager, looked like he was witnessing a car crash in slow motion, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated horror. She walked past Derek's irritated scowl. She walked past Trent's confused frown. She didn't stop until she stood directly beside Kamiko Hayashi's chair. Then she did something no one in that room expected. She didn't nod. She didn't give a slight servile bow. She placed her hands formally at her sides and dipped into a deep, respectful bow from the waist, the kind reserved for elders and masters. It was a gesture of profound reverence, utterly out of place from a waitress to a guest, and it sucked all the air out of the room. When she rose, her posture was no longer that of a server. It was straight, poised, and full of a newfound authority. She looked directly into Kamiko's eyes, and in crystal clear, perfectly fluent Japanese, she spoke. Her voice was low, but carried an undeniable strength, each syllable precise and respectful. "Hayashi-sama, この不幸形に対し心からお詫び申し上げます。私は申し込むべきではありませんが、この場合、チームウォークは裏切りでもあると存じます。お許しいただきましたら、お手伝いさせていただきます." The effect was electric. Derek's jaw went slack. The glass of bourbon in his hand froze halfway to his lips. He stared, uncomprehending, as if the furniture had just started reciting poetry. Trent's smug, superior smile vaporized. It was replaced by a look of stunned confusion, his brain short-circuiting as it tried to process the scene. The help was speaking, and not in English? But the most powerful reaction came from Kamiko. For the entire evening, her face had been a beautiful, unreadable mask. Now it transformed. Her eyes, which had held only cool reserve, widened. A shock of recognition, then a wave of sheer, unguarded relief flashed in them. It was the look of a castaway, finally spotting a sail on the horizon. She didn't speak loudly. She simply reached out, her movements graceful and deliberate, and gently placed her hand on Naomi's arm. Her touch was warm and firm. When she replied, her voice was soft but thick with emotion. "Mite kurete arigato." Thank you for seeing me. 4 words. That was all it took. The balance of power didn't just shift, it shattered and reassembled itself entirely. In an instant, the billion-dollar meeting was no longer controlled by the arrogant CEOs in their tailored suits. It was controlled by the waitress. The air in the room grew thick and heavy, charged with a new energy. The dynamic had utterly transformed. Naomi was no longer a waitress. She was a conduit of truth, and her voice was clear and sharp as a blade. Kamiko gave a nearly imperceptible nod. Naomi stepped forward, her movements now purposeful and commanding. She reached for the sleek leather contract folder that Derek had so confidently slid across the table. The weight of it felt different in her hands now, not a document of opportunity, but a weapon of deceit.
She opened it. The rustle of the expensive paper was the only sound. She began to read, not just translating words, but excavating their hidden meaning. Her voice, once silent, now filled the space with cold, hard clarity. She paused on a dense paragraph, her finger tapping the page. Her head snapped up, her eyes locking onto Derek. "Wait a minute. This clause here, Section 7B," she tone was no longer neutral, it was accusatory. "This doesn't say shared rights. It grants Valamcor unrestricted, unilateral rights to renegotiate all IP licenses post-merger. That means you can legally strip away the patents for the surgical AI she personally invented. You're not absorbing her technology, you're planning to steal it." Derek's face tightened. "That's a standard merger clause," he began, his voice losing its smooth confidence. "It is not standard," Naomi cut him off, her voice leaving no room for argument. She didn't even glance at him. She was already flipping to another page, her mind working at lightning speed. "And this," she continued, her voice rising with incredulous fury, "Section 12, a non-compete? This is a life sentence. This wouldn't just prevent Miss Hayashi from starting a new company. It would prevent her from consulting, from teaching, from even speaking at a conference in her own field. For a decade." She finally looked up from the document, sweeping her gaze from Derek's pale face to Trent's panicked one. She didn't shout. She stated the fact with a devastating calm that was more powerful than any scream. "You aren't just trying to buy her company. You are trying to erase her, to take her life's work and then make sure she can never work again." A sheen of sweat glistened on Trent's forehead. Derek's jaw was clenched so tight, a muscle twitched. Their perfect, predatory plan was crumbling to dust in front of them, exposed word by damning word. Then Kamiko gave another small, silent signal. Her aide, who had been a statue all evening, finally moved. From his inner jacket pocket, he produced a small, sleek silver voice recorder. He placed it in the center of the table, right next to the ruined contract. The click of the play button was deafening. The room was filled with their own voices, now horribly alien to them. Derek's voice, low and conspiratory. "Let's just get to the final offer. Cut out the incentive clauses. We'll absorb her execs. She'll never know the difference." Trent's laugh, ugly and dismissive. "She's lost in her own little world. We feed her whatever we want. The translator does the heavy lifting." The recording clicked off. The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by the faint hum of the city far below. There was no denial, no excuse. The truth was laid bare. They hadn't just been outmaneuvered. They had been caught, red-handed. The silence after the recording ended was a physical thing, heavy and suffocating. It was shattered by the violent crash of the door flying open. Foster, Naomi's manager, exploded into the room. His face was a thunderous shade of purple, veins bulging at his temples. He didn't see the stunned executives or the damning recorder. He saw only one thing, an employee who had broken the most sacred rule. He stormed directly toward Naomi, finger jabbing the air. "Brooks!" he roared, his voice echoing off the mahogany panels. "What in God's name do you think you're doing?" He got right in her face, spittle flying. "You are done. Do you hear me? Fired. Get your things and get out of my restaurant, now. Security will escort you out." It was a performance of pure, panic-driven power. He was reasserting control over the only thing in the room he still thought he could control, the help. A flicker of the old, ugly smirk returned to Trent's face. He leaned back, crossing his arms, enjoying the show. Finally, he sneered, loud enough for everyone to hear. Someone around here knows how to do their job. Naomi stood her ground, but her heart hammered against her ribs. This was it, the consequence she had feared. The world was punishing her for speaking up. But before she could take a breath, before Foster could grab her arm, a new voice cut through the tension. It was calm, deep, and carried an authority that made Foster's yelling seem like the tantrum of a child. Actually, the voice came from the doorway. All heads turned. A man stood there, silhouetted against the soft light of the main dining room. He stepped inside, revealing himself. Mal Jones, impeccably dressed in a navy suit that spoke of quiet money and immense power, not loud flash. He was in his early 40s, clean-shaven, with a gaze so steady it seemed to calm the chaotic energy in the room. He was the executive director of the North American Innovation Alliance, a key financial partner Kimiko had invited to observe discreetly.
"She's not going anywhere," he stated, his voice leaving no room for argument. He walked into the center of the room, a stark contrast to Foster's hysterical entrance. He didn't even look at the sputtering manager at first. His eyes were on Naomi, filled with a respect that made her want to weep with relief.
I've been observing this entire display from the main dining room. I heard the recording, I saw the disrespect, and I witnessed the courage. Finally, he turned his piercing gaze to Foster, who seemed to shrink under its weight. "You are not firing this young woman tonight," Mal said, each word a hammer blow to Foster's authority. "On the contrary, you owe her a formal apology. She just saved this restaurant from hosting a monumental act of corporate fraud and exposed a shocking lack of integrity in your most valued guests." He looked at Derek and Trent, who looked like they wanted the floor to swallow them whole. The power in the room didn't just shift, it was seized. The angry manager, the smug CEOs, they were all rendered silent and insignificant. The real power had been in the doorway all along, and it had just chosen a side. And it had chosen Naomi.
The room was still. The storm of Foster's rage had passed, leaving a strange, quiet awe in its wake. All eyes were fixed on the two women at the center of it all. Kimiko Hayashi rose from her chair. The movement was fluid and graceful, a queen ascending her throne. She did not look at the disgraced men or the chastised manager. Her entire world had narrowed to the young woman who had stepped out of the shadows to defend her. She approached Naomi. The air seemed to hum with the significance of the moment. Kimiko's expression was no longer one of unreadable calm or quiet relief. It was alight with fierce admiration and genuine warmth. She stopped before Naomi and, in a gesture that was profoundly personal, reached out and took both of Naomi's hands in her own. Her touch was firm, grounding. When she spoke, she did not use her translator. She used her own voice, her English carefully chosen and softly accented, making the moment entirely between them. "You saw me," she said, her words simple, but carrying the weight of a lifetime of being overlooked. "You did not see a title. You did not see a deal. You saw me." She paused, her gaze holding Naomi's, seeing the intelligence, the strength, the years of being underestimated that mirrored her own. "I do not offer this lightly," Kimiko continued, her voice gaining a formal, official strength. "I would like to offer you a position at Hoshiko AI, not as a waitress, not as a translator." She smiled, a real transformative smile that reached her eyes. "I want you as my executive advisor for global strategy. I want your mind. I want your courage. I want your integrity on my team. You will help me lead our expansion into the United States. You will be my eyes and ears, the one who ensures we never make the mistake these men did, the mistake of not truly seeing the people we work with. The details followed, each one more breathtaking than the last. Your student debt will be paid in full as of tomorrow. Your salary will be... She named a figure that made Naomi's breath catch in her throat, a number that belonged in a fantasy. You will have a home near our offices, and if you wish to continue your education, any university, any program in the world will be fully funded by the company. It was more than a job offer. It was a key to a new life. It was an acknowledgement that her worth was immeasurably greater than anyone in that room had ever imagined. She stood there, the echo of the men's insults still hanging in the air, the feel of her manager's grip still faint on her arm. She looked from Kamiko's earnest face to Mal Jones's approving nod, to the shattered arrogance of Derek and Trent. The invisible woman was invisible no more. She was being seen, not for what she appeared to be, but for who she truly was, a hero. Tears welled in her eyes, but they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of profound release and validation. She squeezed Kamiko's hands gently, her voice steady and clear when she finally spoke. "Yes," she said, the word feeling like a vow. "I accept. I would be honored." Kamiko's smile widened. "Then come," she said, gently looping her arm through Naomi's, turning her away from the ruins of the old world and toward the door. And just like that, Naomi Brooks, the waitress, walked out of the restaurant on the arm of a billionaire, leaving her old life behind and stepping into a future she had built with her own voice.
The fallout wasn't just swift, it was a reckoning. The damning recording, once a secret weapon in a private dining room, found its way into the world. It didn't just leak, it exploded. It spread through Silicon Valley's back channels like wildfire before igniting the entire internet. The story was too powerful, too perfectly symbolic to ignore. Headline: The Palisade Takedown. Waitress topples tech titans in $800 million deal gone wrong. Headline: Silent no more. How a server's voice sank $1 billion power grab. Headline: The Bonsai Tree Fights Back. Kamiko Hayashi and the Hero Waitress. The court of public opinion delivered its verdict instantly. The internet dubbed it poetic justice. Comment sections overflowed with praise for Naomi's courage and Kamiko's strategic genius. Memes of Derek and Trent photoshopped into clown suits next to a dignified Naomi went viral. Behind the closed, soundproof doors of corporate boardrooms, the real axe fell. Derek Caldwell was summoned by his own board. The emergency meeting lasted less than an hour. There was no golden parachute, no graceful exit. He was fired. For cause. His name was scrubbed from the company website by lunchtime, his legacy reduced to a cautionary tale about arrogance. Trent Langley resigned to pursue other opportunities 2 days later. Everyone knew the truth. His reputation, built on being a ruthless shark, was now permanently stained with the shame of being outsmarted and exposed. The flashy watch and the sharp suits couldn't hide the fact that he was, professionally, finished. Investors fled. Stock prices tanked. The doors of every exclusive club and future partnership slammed shut in their faces. They had gambled everything on their perceived superiority and had lost it all. They learned the hardest lesson of all. Never, ever underestimate the quiet ones. But this was more than just two men getting their comeuppance. This was more than a business deal. It was a revolution disguised as a dinner service. It was the story of two women the world had tried to make small. Kamiko Hayashi used her power, not with loud boasts, but with immense patience. Her silence was her strategy, her composure, her weapon. She proved that true power doesn't need to shout. Naomi Brooks used her voice. She weaponized her knowledge, her integrity, and the courage she'd forged in a lifetime of being overlooked. She proved that the most powerful person in the room isn't always the one with the biggest title. Together, they didn't just win a negotiation. They flipped the whole world upside down. They became a symbol for anyone who has ever been dismissed, ignored, or made to feel invisible. So, remember this. The next time you're in a room, look around. The person pouring your coffee. The one sitting quietly in the corner of the meeting. The voice you're tempted to talk over. The people you ignore, the voices you don't hear, they might just be the ones rewriting the ending. And they've been watching, they've been listening, and they are ready.
We invite you to join Lightstories if this story strikes a chord with you, makes you smile, or stirs up strong emotions in you. Each story is meant to uplift, heal, and remind you of the beauty that comes from human connection. Share this story with someone who believes in kindness and second chances by clicking the subscribe button and turning on the notification bell. Keep your heart open till we cross paths again, because you never know when someone might ask, "Can I join you here?"